Cowabunga, dudes!
I'm Steph.
And I'm Ange.
We're
Nerdazons.
This fortnight's choice is actually a listener's choice, and they wanted to do... I know, finally, no one ever submits any listener's choice, so I'm excited. This was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014 remake.
And who was the listener?
So one of our regular long-term listeners, MJ Macca Jr. on YouTube, requested this. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'll start with the first movie synopsis. 4 teenage mutant ninja turtles emerge from the shadows to protect New York City from a gang of criminal ninjas. Now, I loved this movie as a kid.
Heck yes.
I freaking loved it.
Okay, I'm not a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan. I never really was, but I remember seeing this movie a few times and going, yeah, it's all right.
So not only did I watch this movie, I also watched the cartoon quite a lot as a kid as well. So the 1987 and 96 cartoon. I don't know. I always liked this movie. I know it's really hokey rewatching it, and it's definitely very cheesy and not just the pizza, but it just... yeah.
But it took me a second.
I just like it. I really feel this movie... you know what? Let's break it down. So I'm going to start by breaking it down on the characters, and I think that this movie really captured the original cartoon's characters' personalities. So the 2014, when a kingpin threatens New York City, a group of mutated turtle warriors must emerge from the shadows to protect their home. Let's start off with characters. I loved the 1990. I actually think the characters in the 1990 movie really incorporated the original cartoon. Like, you had every personality down to a T.
Exactly. Correct. And I actually have a little bit that I have to say about that. Okay, so with the Turtles in the 1991, you could actually connect with them and you actually got to know their backstories, and it was actually fun, and I liked them a lot more, and I could actually connect with them a lot more versus the where the others, where it starts off and you're just like, who are they? What are they? Huh?
Yeah.
And if you didn't know who they were or who Splinter was, you would be like, these things are aliens. I don't like them. They're creepy.
Yeah. So with the turtles in the new one, for starters, their appearance was monstrous. It was just not what they were. They were so disgustingly large. You didn't need them to be that muscular. They didn't look friendly. They looked scary, I think, if you were a child to watch it, compared to the others. And, you know, they're supposed to be teenagers, and they're that massive and muscular.
They looked really, like, hulkish.
Yes.
You know? Yes. Whereas the original, they did look like teenagers. They kind of spoke like teenagers. They, were obsessed with different things.
And they weren't super muscular. Like, I don't understand why they had to make them, like, massive bodybuilders. In the other one, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I didn't realize that the original Turtles were actually prosthetics done by Jim
Henson. Yes, I was actually going to mention that. So it was done by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it was done. They started it with like a cast. Then it was latex as a suit for the cast members to wear, and then they had the face was actually animatronics controlled by a puppeteer. So if you love Jim Henson's work, you know that the puppetry is incredible, and it was very advanced for the time that it was done. It was 1990, and then the actual wiring was in the shells on their back.
They're ninjas, we know that.
Yep.
But it actually looked like that when they were fighting versus the other one. And you could clearly see that when they were like, hi-ya, and nowhere near his face, and he's like, oh, and fell over.
It's just so great. Hokey, the original, you know,
but
and even...
It was a bit more violent, the new one.
Correct.
like that. If I was a little kid watching this movie for the first time, I would be like, this is kind of okay. Like, it looks pretty cool, but meh.
Yeah, I'll
And
continue on
yeah.
that story in a bit, but I just want to finish the breakdown of the characters. The next character I really wanted to point out was Splinter. I actually think, okay, his design in the new one was better than the Turtles, but they butchered his story. He had no development, not even development, no character depth of his story. So in the original, there was a really good backstory. His master was, a ninja, and he watched and shadowed and practiced what his master was doing, which is how he became a master himself. Whereas in this one, he found a book. It just was so...
And just declared himself a master.
Yeah, and I just think if it was that easy, everyone would pick up the book and be masters like ninjas. There was no, I don't know. I could see what they were trying to accomplish, to be like, I need my kids to be protectors, but to be able to protect themselves. But I just think the development was a lot better in the original, and the depth of his character itself. And it also helped, this brings me to my other point on characters, it helped link Shredder and the Foot Clan, because Shredder came to America just as Splinter was, because his master fled to America and Shredder followed them and killed them because he was so traumatized that he lost the woman he loved, and then they were linked because Shredder recognized the fighting style. And so the story was definitely deeper and more connected in the original compared to the new one, where it made zero sense. Like, I couldn't be afraid of the guy because really all it was this whole big bad like clan gang just wanted to create a poison just to save people from the poison, to make money. There was just nothing in it.
I know, I agree. I was like, oh, yeah. And can we also talk about April?
Oh, that was my next character I was going to break down. They also butchered that character.
Okay, sorry, I'm digressing a little bit in this movie because things are just,
Yes.
But that movie is so chauvinistic, and this kind of breaks down to my April, because, okay, they're teenagers, they're going to have a little crush. Whatever. Turtles in the remake, they were like super rapey towards her, and they made her into like, as everybody just wanted to have sex with her or try to like get with her.
My points on April is the original, so I think it's Judith Hoag was the original April. She was gorgeous. She was hard-hitting. She was a strong journalist in the original.
A strong journalist, yes.
Yeah, and like, and just as a person who, was just street smart, she didn't have to go. And they just really did sexualize her in this. Like, even the part when she's hanging out, when they're in the truck and they're gonna die, and she's hanging out and they have to zoom in, and he's like, oh yeah, just keep looking out the window, because they zoomed in on her butt. And I was just like, this is meant to be for a kids film. That's something more for like an M film or like a Transformers film. That's a bit older audience, but I feel like the audience who should be watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are younger, and they really don't need to see that. Whereas in the, sorry, I'm gonna continue, sorry, but in the original, Michelangelo or some of the others, they might just whisper, oh, she's so pretty, but they never were really in your face, come and like marry me or something, or hey girl, or it was just done too much throughout the film.
And also, as a feminist, it was just disgusting the way that they over-sexualized her.
Yep.
And also, Megan Fox, she is not a great actress.
No, I was watching
she had no
face. It's like
nothing.
She had Botox or something.
Just like, but she was unforgettable. I mean, she was forgettable. I mean, not unforgettable. She was very forgettable.
She is very forgettable. But I was thinking the same thing, actually. I was watching in certain scenes when she should be sad or something, or even when it was relating to her dad or something, there was no emotion. And I'm like, you're only in this because obviously they think you're gorgeous and you'll bring in like the ratings. That's
Yeah.
in most of the films she's in.
Yeah.
And
No.
yeah, no, they butchered her. I definitely the points for the Teenage Mutant, like for the Turtles, Splinter, even Shredder. Actually, since we're still in characters, I'm going to bring up Shredder. Shredder was so much more intimidating in the original with just his few pieces of like razor armor, and his stare was just so scary compared to I just remember when I saw all the knives come out of his suit, and I'm like, pardon my French, but what the fudge is this? Like, it was way too many knives. It's like they tried to make it so action packed that it was ridiculous. The suit. He didn't need that massive suit. Even in the comics, when you look at him, he's just got these really cool, like, razor blade shoulder pads and stuff. And he didn't have a massive suit. And the mask wasn't even there. Like, and he had no backstory. So.
No, like, why? Yeah, exactly. You're like, cool. Why build or why be a giant, like, giant, scissor hands and be that big when all you want to do is create a virus to make money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just makes no sense.
It just, yeah, I couldn't. I'll get into the story writing in a sec, but I'll just point out that essentially the Turtles, Splinter, April, and Shredder, definitely the first original takes trump over that. But we can move on to... No, I need
to move on to Will Arnett. Oh my God, I cannot. I'm not.
I missed Casey. Why didn't they just bring Casey back into it?
Yeah. I hated his character.
Yeah, he came off pervy, really pervy.
Yeah, and when she calls him and you've got the da 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 da, that song, and then he's like, oh, do you want me to come? You always, I always have to come to follow you. Yeah, I'm not gonna go help April. Next minute he's there waiting for her.
Yeah, I mean, she needed the friend because obviously in the cartoon she had the news van, like she had her van and she had her yellow jumpsuit, which I'll give this one like a 0.1 point that they at least put in a yellow jacket, because in the original she wasn't in yellow. So she didn't have that iconic look, but she had the look. She had the hair of April O'Neil and the attitude, right? So, but it just, like they should have brought Casey, and he was a much better character than... He
really was.
Than this was like driver.
Sweet. He was really sweet, whereas Will Arnett was just, ugh. I don't like him on the best of days.
See, I actually think he's a bit funny as Job in Arrested Development. Yeah, in this one I was just like, oh, because as Job he just gets dumb, and it's just funny dumb. But this, he was just really pervy.
Yeah, like I tried watching Arrested Development. Sorry, tangent. That's not like us. I tried watching Arrested Development. My friends were like, you would love it. Watch it. I got 3 episodes in and I'm like, no.
It wasn't my cup of tea either, but my partner really liked it. And he picked, when he rewatches shows, he tends to pick the good ones, and then I find them funny. And then it's enough to get me interested in watching it. So he's done that with a few.
He's so smart.
Yeah, he is. He's done it with Parks and Recs, The Office, a little bit with Community, but I'm still not 100% into that one, but yeah. Anyway, back to the story. I want to mention, which I think we've already partially covered it, storyline. The second one was so sloppy. As we mentioned about the villain, I had no idea what the end goal was. The end goal was essentially to make money, but it made zero sense. You introduced this really scary guy in his dojo and how strong he was, but then it was like, but what was the end game? Like even the Foot Clan, like they all had guns. Where was the ninja power in it? Like the first one. The story was just, the pothole was terrible.
Agreed.
And it made no sense, and they had like a few key points and shoved action in the middle.
How could like somebody who's obviously editing it and when they sell it, why would anybody want to buy this movie to put it out there?
I don't know.
With all those plot holes, like this, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, this is a terrible movie.
It is.
I loved the 1990s
Me too.
so much.
And you know, I have to say, I always knew that the original 1990, it was never like a massive hit film. I think for kids it was, but I don't think it was a big film when it first came out. But after watching this one and going back to that, it makes you realize that the first one was a masterpiece in comparison.
Yeah, even like the fighting styles, you know, I loved when you saw the fight scenes and that you could, you know, it was like wrestling, you know.
Yeah,
you
it was so hokey.
It was so hokey, but it was fun.
It was. And I'm going to mention next point that I have to talk about is like set design and costume design. We have already discussed how amazing the Turtles were and how incredible their costumes were. But set design, I really like the feel of the 1991. It's that real grimy, like you got to remember it was the peak of like the tail end of the 80s, the start of the 90s. So you had your gangs, you had that grimy street, like night walking. It made you, I don't know, feel unsafe. And it looked, you know, when I was saying in one of our older movies where it's like the streets look wet.
Yes.
I think it was the Little Shop of Horror one I was saying that in, and it just had that feel to it that they were all misfits, and that's what I think the Foot Clan was supposed to represent. Like Shredder was a big massive misfit, you know, he didn't get the girl he liked, he got injured in a fight, he followed them to hunt them down, and he created an army of misfits as well. And you know, he wants them all to be ninjas too, which was cool, but then it's not in the new one. And then the set just didn't feel right either. It just felt like you picked a location and you started to film. Even
New York, just middle of New York, like every other film. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And it was so much CGI, even when fighting on the rooftops. Like in the 1990s one, like when Casey is looking out in the binoculars and he sees Raph fighting on the rooftop, like that.
Mm-hmm. That was cool.
Like an actual rooftop fight scene, whereas, you know, some of it was just so CGI and on location. Even the tower scene, and it just looked terrible.
Oh, the tower scene was so dumb. Yep. I'm actually just looking over my notes, and I have something to say. So one thing that I do want to say is that in the original, I like the fact that they spend a lot of time in the sewers because that's where they live.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's where we know them to be in the sewers. However, how much would they stink? Like,
yeah.
The whole time I'm just like, they would smell so rancid.
Yeah.
Being down there, and how would they still got clean clothes? And I was just giggling to myself going,
but how comfy did their little den look in the original? Even the skateboarding in the original looked cool.
It was so good. In the original, they mentioned pizza a lot because the Teenage Turtles love pizza.
Love pizza.
However,
especially pepperoni.
Exactly. And in the remake, when Splinter's trying to find out where they were,
it wasn't even pepperoni.
It wasn't even pepperoni.
Sorry,
and it was only mentioned once.
Yeah. The only other time you do, I do agree with you. Yes, Splinter shows it there. It wasn't the typical pepperoni pizza that they always had, but then you only ever saw it again when April was feeding them.
I like that that's how they got their pizza. You know, that's how they got love for the pizza. I'm going to read some of my notes. Is this like a nod to the Star Wars? Do we need to contact George Lucas? Because there's actually quite a lot of Star Wars references in this movie. So I don't know if it is a reference or not, but when Splinter's in the fire and he's like, use your force, psh, and I'm just like, oh, there you go. And then he returns.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, and then he's like, because he's like, I am your father. Psh. And then he returns. Yeah, he says like, use the force, and there's like little nods there, and I'm like,
I did not pick that up.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because it would have been like the original cartoon and that came out in 86. So like whoever created it, I'm sorry, I don't know their name. I should have done my research. But they would have grown up with Star Wars.
And also
I
my
never
other
noticed
note.
that. I'm so like, wow, how did I miss that?
So one of my other notes is Sam Rockwell is in this movie? Question mark. And he's one of the thugs.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I really like Sam Rockwell.
I forgot to remember to mention this when we were talking about characters and storyline. This is kind of 2 in 1 here. 2 things. I disliked that the second one became an April O'Neil story, whereas in the original one, it was April O'Neil searching for the story, you know? So,
Yes.
And then 2, I didn't like that she was the savior of them. I didn't like the backstory of that.
Speaking of that, when you said, it's not that April story, I understand that the movie is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first, and then April.
Correct.
It's not an April movie starring the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And that's what they really made. Like, I noticed when she was sitting with Splinter and Splinter's like, you're the one who saved us. They had a term for it. I didn't remember it, but it's like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and your bravery. In the original, it's about April finding the story. She wants to report on it. And I think it was done in the perfect balance in the original.
Yes.
I agree. I think the scene that reflects it the best is when they're all in her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And you really do see everyone's personality then. And you really do see that they are just teenagers because they're watching the different TV shows, and then when they all try and hide and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's just such a happy film to watch. And you got to remember, it was a kid's cartoon, and I think this movie really did reflect that well. But they tried to get a bit too serious and action fighting in the next one.
I agree. It was a very serious film. But also going back to when they like teenagers and stuff, I hated and when they went back in the remake and that they showed them as as babies, and that they showed them, as preteens.
Yes.
And I'm like, how could you go from like preteen to that?
Yeah.
Oh, they were just ugly and yeah.
Yes, actually, I do also want to mention on character development and stories, and that's all I have to say on this, because as we've mentioned, the second one had 0 storyline. But even them as turtles and brothers, they had 2 sort of journey. They each had their own journey in the original one, but then they had a collective journey on how they have to fight together as one. Like, they were better together as brothers than they were separate. You didn't really have that in this one. Like, Raph didn't really go off. He was just hot-headed, but you didn't see them trying to struggle to be able to work together as 4 brothers. It just kind of was always there. And then you just, to wrap that up, you had him do this big speech when they thought that they were going to die.
Yeah.
And you really missed out on that development as well of the characters, I thought, and journey and just storyline for them.
April in the remake, so Megan Fox, she's just an idiot. In the fact that when everybody's running backwards, you're an investigator, you're going to run forwards, but you're also going to maybe protect yourself, or, don't just run in like there's nothing. Yeah. And then when she gets captured and she's got her mobile phone, the lady next to her says no, and she brings it like right out.
Yeah.
And they're like, stop filming.
At least with April, she armed herself with her bag. Yeah. She started swinging it, and she's like, all right, we're going to do this. When I think they were trying to steal parts off the van. Mm-hmm. What a difference in comparison.
And then going on that, when the turtles came in, they wiped her phone. Why didn't he break it? Because obviously, of course, she's going to get it and then re-record it. Just annoys me.
Yeah.
And then Whoopi Goldberg was I don't know why they wasted their money having Whoopi Goldberg in that movie.
You could have put, I think, for the role, it wasn't a massive role and it wasn't an impactful role, and you really could have put anyone in that position. I think I read somewhere that Whoopi Goldberg loved this, like, the series, and her daughter grew up watching it, which is, I think, why she was in it, because she wanted to be in it for that sentimental value. But yeah, I do agree. I like Whoopi Goldberg, but she wasn't in it enough to be impactful. You had 2 scenes and you, like, fired her, whereas I think her boss was in throughout.
Her boss was so, like,
in the original.
Yeah,
he was a bit weird, but, like, he was always there, and she was his number 1 reporter, which is what she's meant to be, not some stupid yoga instructor on, like, the TV show for that was her journalism. It just was so dumb.
That's right. She was meant to be an actual
journalist,
an
investigative journalist, or
but
something.
I didn't like that fact that they completely dumbed her character down in this movie. So
on that point, actually,
April original wins. Sorry.
Oh, for sure. But on that, and another point to prove just how stupid it was. April in the original was intelligent, and she was intelligent enough to not go and tell everyone about the turtles because she knows no one would have believed her. And in this one, they made her out like a mad woman trying to tell them all about these vigilantes and these masked, like, turtles. And, like, even acting that scene out, you must realize that that is the dumbest thing. And of course you're going to get fired if you're trying to tell them that they look like this turtle. I watched that scene and I just thought, for an intelligent person, why would you go about it that way? Such a dumb scene.
Yeah, no, I did not enjoy this. I'm glad it was a cold, wet, rainy day when I was watching this movie.
Yeah.
Because at least I had an excuse to stay, in bed and watch this movie. It was definitely a struggle. I just did not care about this movie at all.
I actually struggled to get motivated to watch it, and I watched it right up to the last point. I found every other excuse to do something.
I only watched it this morning.
I watched it last night.
I was like, I have to watch it.
I almost wasn't going to watch it last night. I'm like, you know what? I'll put my Switch on. I'll play Pokemon Shield while I put it on, and I just,
I'm glad you put Ghost in the Shallot.
Yeah, no, I would have watched it. I always watch it.
I know. Yeah, I just did not care.
Yeah. And I think for this, it's a big, it really does reflect when it's like, we'll just throw money at it and get, like, big names and hot girls and it'll sell a film. And it obviously didn't. Because they they thought if they invested in those, like, action scenes and like the CGI and stuff, it'll make up for the rest of it. But I personally think it just made it look worse, especially with a tacky storyline.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah, I just didn't like this movie at all. And I like to watch the trailers of each before I watch the movie.
You're so good at doing that. I never do it.
And the first trailer doesn't really... So when you're watching the 1990 trailer, it doesn't really tell you much at all about what's going on. And so it's kind of like, oh, I'm excited to watch it. Whereas in the trailer for the 2014, it literally tells you the entire... Oh, shocker that he was the bad guy all along. And also, just one other quick thing, sorry.
No,
one other
right.
really quick thing I want to say is that another reason why she is so dumb is because, okay, this guy worked for your dad. You know nothing about him. Why are you going to tell him this giant news if you didn't do any research on him at all? It's just like, hey, he worked with my dad.
And that's what a journalist is. They do all of that,
Exactly.
Just on Sax for a moment there. As soon as I saw him on the TV, I didn't. Again, I never watched the trailers when I watched this. I didn't know he was in it. As soon as I saw him in it, and because it's the same character he plays in everything, and I'm like, oh, I bet you he's a bad guy, and he was.
Yep.
Like, I didn't trust him as soon as she went there, and I'm like, yeah, he's the baddie in this.
Exactly. Ugh. No.
And like the baddie is supposed to be Shredder. In this, it honestly came across like Shredder was the muscle for him to get the money, you know? But anyway,
exactly.
I didn't like it at all.
Mm-mm.
So, how many movie reels would you give them?
1990, I'm going to go 3.5. It's a great movie. It's fun to watch. However, it does need, it's not a movie you can watch again and again for me. And also, I'm not a huge Turtle fan.
Yeah. I'd give it a 3.75.
Mm-hmm.
It is a movie I have watched many times. I do, need to take some time in between each watch, but I will always go back and watch this. I really always have and still do enjoy this film. It's hokey, it's fun, it's lighthearted like it should be, like the cartoons.
Yeah, whereas 2014, I'm giving it 0.
I'm
If I
giving
could
it
give
a
it
0
minus,
too.
if I could give it a minus, I would. But I'm going to give it completely 0 F failed. We've said this quite a few times. However, this year, I'm going to say this year, 2021, this is the worst movie I've seen.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that, no, it's the worst movie I've seen. That, The Craft, and obviously Psycho are the 3 worst movies.
Yeah.
But I can't choose between them, so I'm going to say of 2021, so far, this is the worst movie I've seen.
Oh, and you've also got Charlie's Angels in there too.
We've
really picked a lot of extremes, I feel, this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely up there. I'd never watch this film again. I barely paid attention when I was watching it. The first time, I'd never go out of my way. And if anything, watching this made me want to put the 1991 back on.
Yep. This movie.
All right. Now you get the fun part.
Woohoo!
What do you think both of these got on Rotten Tomatoes?
1990, I'm going to say keep it on the ball, 90%.
Lower.
Oh.
Significantly lower.
65%.
Lower. Yeah, I know.
1990.
I was really upset when I saw the scores.
32%.
Higher.
What?
Just.
40%.
40%.
I'm so sad.
Yeah, I know. I thought the thing is I think this has a soft spot for people who watched it as kids and they will always like it. And we know, we've already stated, it's not a good film, but it's a great film if you loved it when you watched it. It's funny, hokey.
It still holds up today.
Yeah. The audience.
It doesn't hold up, but it's still watchable today.
Yeah, like the tomato meter was 40%, but the audience score was actually 81 for this one.
Oh,
so it just shows you that the audience actually did like it.
Mm-hmm.
Just whoever did the rating was wrong. What do you think the second one got?
I'm going to go that this one got 20% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Very, very close.
24%.
Lower. I'll give you one more go.
So it's between 20 and 24. 22%.
It got 21.
Oh!
I'm so glad that this one came. When I Googled this, I saw the score of the first one and I'm like, oh my God, the second one better be worse because it was shit, part of my language. But thankfully it was.
But also, we didn't rate this movie completely as high. So I think, because this is not a perfect film.
This is the second one.
No, but I'm saying both of them weren't high on the tomato meter.
But
so, what I'm saying is that I think that if they just they're not. So 1990, not a perfect film. However, I think it just holds a special heart because it's very nostalgic.
Yes. And
Whereas the remake is just utter.
Yeah, and the remake, the audience score on that one was 50% compared to the 81 of the original. So it does show people enjoy the original more. Shall we move on to
Nerdazon's Nerdy Notables?
Okay, you would be super proud of me.
Okay.
So the other night, my friend gave me one of her Discover vouchers, just going, I'm not going to use it. So I was like, all right. So me and my mate went to the drive-ins, and she was like, do you want to go to Conjuring, which I'm really scared about? Or do you want to see the Hitman's Bodyguard's wife's girlfriend's daughter, or whatever that movie's called?
Yeah.
So I was like, I really kind of want to see The Conjuring. I've seen the first one. And my mate's like, I'm scared. I'm like, me too. So anyway, we were watching it, and it was not as scary as what I thought it was.
I got tickets the weekend it came out, and I follow a few horror movie Facebook groups purely, to get some different ideas. I love 80s horror slasher, so I'm in those groups to get ideas of things to watch. And everyone was talking this film up, so I got really excited, and I came out thinking that was one of the worst of that series ever.
The only scary bit to me was when they were on the waterbed and like their face came out the waterbed. That was like, just, oh.
It honestly took two Nightmare on Elm Street scenes from that one scene, like two different iconic shots from that film. It even copied The Exorcist when the priest came out and looked up at the house, and as you would now know that shot because you've seen it. And I just couldn't get past that, and I was just like, this is bad.
Even my mate, who's not a horror fan either, we were like, yeah, and then we were like, oh, I'm going to be scared. But I said to my friend, my mate Ange has an idea. So when there's music, and I told her about your
little tricks to help me get into movies.
And I was like, something's going to happen there. Nothing's going to happen, so that but it kind of ruined it for me because I was like not scared because I automatically in my mind jumped to those things.
It's just the typical layout of a horror movie film, unfortunately, which is one thing why I always liked my favorite horror series is the Nightmare on Elm Street series, is because when you're in your dream, it's a dream, but it's not your typical everything goes dark and something pops out. You could be in your dream and like rockin' 80s music is coming on and everything will come through.
I've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh my god, can we please have a movie marathon?
Yes.
Good. I'll bring them over. I have them on DVD. But yeah, it's just when I was a kid, I was terrified of horror films, and then because being the youngest, I was babysat by older brothers and sisters. I had no choice to watch them. And then to help me get through it, I figured out what the layout of it was in order to help me get better. And then I just desensitized when I hit a certain age to the horror films. So, but yeah, no, I hated that. I went and saw it recently. Actually, speaking of cinemas, I used, me and my partner used one of our last Discover cards. We went and saw a New Zealand film that's just come out called Cousins, and I really recommend everyone to just go and see it. It's a sad but beautiful film, and it just really showcases how beautiful New Zealand is. I think we already know from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but it's a beautiful film.
This is actually flowing really well because speaking of New Zealand, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, so I went to
so jealous.
I went to Supernova recently, and I was so excited because David Wenham was there.
That's cool. I would have got him to sign my Van Helsing DVD.
Was he in Van Helsing?
Yeah, he was the funny friend of Hugh Jackman.
So anyway, my mum is in love with him and Sigrid Thornton because she grew up. She was obsessed with Sea Change, the Australian show, and so we always grew up with Sea Change always on. And so to me, David Wenham is Diver Dan. So Mum was going to try to come. She was like, oh, I'll come to Supernova with you. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. She's like, I get to meet Diver Dan. And I said, all right. And then she chickened out because I think the crowds and all that stuff. So anyway, Mum goes to me, can you get Diver Dan to sign my VHS copy of Sea Change? And I said, okay. So
wow, he must have been shocked when he saw that.
So anyway, I lined up and I was actually genuinely nervous because I love him so much. So I got there and I'm like, I pulled out my my VHS and he goes, oh my goodness, someone's a fan. I said, oh, well, it's actually not for me, it's for my mum. And he's like, really? Wink. And I went, no, this is for my mum.
What a smart.
And he goes, oh, what's her name? So anyway, he actually wrote a really sweet little story on. So I got him to sign the inside of her VHS. Okay, so he wrote on her VHS, looking forward to meeting you one day. Best wishes. And I thought that was so sweet.
Aww.
And then I said to him, oh, by the way, my mum said that she's so devastated that you weren't in the remake of Sea Change. And he goes, oh, I didn't even watch it. Was it any good? I went, no. And he's like, oh, phew.
That's so funny. Oh, I didn't know he was going to be there.
There were so many people lined up for him. Because I was expecting, not many, but yeah, and he was just really lovely.
And there wasn't, to be honest, Nova, my opinions on Nova, but the fact that they couldn't even get any other guests coming in, I didn't think it was going to be very big.
And a lot of them actually ended up cancelling.
Yeah.
Due to restrictions. But it was cool. I got to see Dr. Carl. I love Dr. Carl. But Artist Alley is my favourite.
It's usually my favourite area too.
It's the bomb. But it was only about 4 rows and that there wasn't and there was so many blank spots and it was only in one hall, not 2.
To be honest, I have to say Sydney Supernova this year, there was barely any advertising for it. I didn't even know it was coming up. So it's like, if they didn't even advertise people to buy tickets, how did they advertise for people to be a store holder? Like, they usually are pretty on top of that with their Facebook posts and their Instagram posts.
Even they are on TV. I haven't seen a commercial for it.
They've really dropped the ball with Sydney, and it's been happening year after year. Told you. But I've been telling you for ages.
No, but obviously I had to go because of David Wenham.
Yes.
As if I wasn't going to go. But I just think, they should have reduced the price of the tickets or made it free entry,
How much are the tickets?
$35 a day.
Yeah.
And David Wenham was $60.
Wow. So it's still full price as if you had everything open.
Exactly. So I was just a bit disappointed this year, but hopefully if Comic-Con comes, it'll be fun. But what have you been up to?
Nothing much with me. Just been studying and playing a lot of my Switch. It's been distracting me from my studies, actually.
Still Pokemon?
Yeah, still Pokemon, because I'm taking my time to build everyone up and level them up. So it's quite time consuming. Just been using a bunch of Discover vouchers for Time Zone because I'm obsessed with that place. Finally got to a gold level card, so it shows that I go a lot.
Also, I have had feedback for when we were saying my new favorite word, quadrilogy.
Yep.
Sad to say, we were wrong. I even said to my friend who is an English teacher, what would you call a movie that's set of 4? And she's like, quadrilogy? I was like, that's what I would think. However, we were wrong. Okay, so Google actually says you could call a series of 4 films or books a tetralogy or quartet.
Wow, I like ours better.
Yeah, hashtag quadrilogy.
Yeah, copyright notice on jokes. But great news on that. So, as most of you know, the brilliantly talented Craftcaster does our logo design and 2 merch designs. They were on Redbubble, but they have now changed to Teespring, so you can jump on over there and get those designs now. I know we've been getting some questions about the links not working, so make sure you go to Teespring, the Craftcaster.
I'm a bit excited about that. I've just had a look and I can see we've already had some purchases. Woohoo!
I know, and our newest design, which I'm the most excited about, actually came from one of our crappiest episodes.
Yes, yes. Oh my God. So the Craftcaster has actually drawn. So if anybody remembers, I accidentally said Patrick Stewart has nice legs instead of saying, no, I did say he genuinely did have nice legs.
So I think how the conversation went was I said Christian Stewart had good legs, and you said, what, Patrick Stewart? And I'm like, jokingly, yeah, Patrick Stewart has good legs. And then you're like, he genuinely does have good legs. So they've done a brilliant design based on that quote.
So it's Patrick Stewart sitting in his captain's chair with his legs crossed, and it says wearing heels and stockings, saying Patrick Stewart has nice legs.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to get one.
I've already ordered mine.
I have to wait till payday before I can order mine. But yes, I'm very keen.
I'm also keen for next month's episode. Oh,
next fortnight. I know, we're like 6 months in and we're still doing it.
Ugh, one day we'll get there. So we're doing Mortal Kombat.
I'm so excited.
The 1990 version versus
2021.
2021. Haha. So just remember, if you want to listen to us, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your good podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, and we are also on Instagram. Until then,
stay nerdy.